You can just drop the trays at the back door, Leela. It's a private dinner, Anya said without looking up, the way someone announces a verdict. We only invited industry people. Not family. The words landed before I could set the second tray down. For a moment I thought I'd misheard, until I saw the way she smiled, small and sure, as if she'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times. I stood on the porch with 2 steaming pans of lasagna, the scent of garlic and basil mixing with the sudden metallic sourness of being cut out. Through the open French doors I could see a long table. 20 faces, soft lights, wine glasses raised. Laughter floated out like a scene from a life I had helped underwrite. Jonah, I said. His name came out thinner than I expected. You invited people tonight? He was at the sink, shoulders hunched. Mom, please, it's complicated. Complicated? Anya's voice slid across the patio. This is a brand launch, Leela. This is key. We can't have confusion. Confusion, she called it. As if the person who had co-signed their first equipment loan and wired the down payment for their storefront was a complication. As if the woman who had spent 2 summers canning sauce at the kitchen table and labeling family recipes into a binder had no place at the table where her life helped build the place they now celebrated. I put the trays on the porch table and felt my hands go light. You could have told me, I said. Even a call? She looked at me the way a director looks at an extra who's stepped out of place. We did tell you, Leila. You just don't listen, you get sentimental. The word landed with perfect cruelty. Sentimental, the new euphemism for obsolete. I walked away before anyone saw me. Mothers learn to leave the stage when they're humiliated. The costume of calm is often the only dignity left. My car ride home was a slow drum of embarrassment. The radio played a song about new beginnings, and I wanted to hurl the radio through the window. At dawn, I sat with a mug of coffee that had gone cold and took out the ledger I kept under the 3rd drawer by habit. A tattered spiral where I wrote down dates and amounts when I helped people who needed help. It had never been a tally for leverage. It was a map of favors, small mercies that knit a life together. But now the spiral felt like an inventory of insult. January 2019, $3,500 to secure storefront lease. March 2019, $7,200 line for equipment purchase. July 2020, $400/month for car payment. Deck 2020, $2,000 wedding gift. Totals and margins sat like small, accusing ghosts. Roughly $33,100 over 3 years. I'd kept the copies because I thought I might need them in small, quiet ways to remind myself that my help had been given with love, not strings. At 10 a.m. my phone buzzed with a curt text. Hi Leela, small thing, payroll bounced. Could you cover it today? I'll send the check ASAP. Anya, the message was the same gentle lie she used for favors. Equal parts apology and assumption. It was also the exact kind of ask that had boiled down into my ledger, another page to be filled. I typed 2 words and hit send, no more. Her reply came back within a minute. Wow, okay. So petty, you do realize how this will look, right? Petty, the word had become her dagger. I did not call. Instead, I went to the bank and asked to speak with Mr. Carlson, the manager who had seen my accounts trim down month after month. He remembered me, who wouldn't? The woman who had deposited cash at the counter and taken a number to wait her turn. Mrs. Alvarez, he said, using my married name as if it was a small form of kindness. What can I do for you? Cancel the automatic transfers to Jonah's business account, I said and watched his eyebrows knit. He pulled my file and laid out numbers. The monthly $400 car payment, the $300 utilities transfer, the quarterly $2,500 that had been intended for equipment maintenance. He typed, clicked, sighed. You sure this is? After 3 years? After $33,100, I said. Saying the number made it feel less like a private shame and more like an arithmetic truth. Mr. Carlson processed it. A confirmation popped onto his screen like a small bell. When I stepped back out onto the sidewalk, for the first time in years, my shoulders dropped. It was a small freedom, but its edges were sharp with consequence. That night Jonah came by, unannounced, his face doing that boyish thing it did when he still wanted to be forgiven without understanding why. The porch light made the freckles along his nose look like constellations from another life. Mom, you can't just cut us off, he said, sliding into the kitchen chair. We've got payroll, vendor invoices, the loan payment due. Anya's, she's freaking out. Good, I said. stops her from finding better ways to panic. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't get it, she's under pressure, this launch is everything. His voice had the pleading of a man trying to keep two gears, a wife's nerves and a mother's heart, from grinding. You built this with my money, I said, and I saw the way the words landed, not like a salvo but like a mirror. He flinched. You signed the leases, rented the refrigerators, I fronted it until you had investors. I did it because I love you, but you can't reduce me to a line item and then exclude me from your life. He tried to respond, to find the familiar place of negotiation where a mother's patience could be reshaped into comfort. We'll pay you back, we always say we will. And I will count, I told him. But this is not about payback, it's about respect, about not being erased from my own story. That evening there was a knock on my door, and when I opened it, a man in a gray suit handed me an envelope on thick legal paper. The header read, Notice of Concern, Petition for Conservatorship, Pre-Filing Notice. I read the first line twice. The next line told me they had consulted an attorney and found cause to question my financial judgment. They were preparing to file papers that could result in a court declaring me unable to manage my own assets. The world tilted. Jonah, I called out into silence. He had left. Anya was not there to meet my gaze. The house smelled faintly of a dinner someone else had eaten without me. My hands did not tremble. They did something stranger. They tightened with resolve. Conservatorship. Legal guardianship. The same words used in news stories that always felt like the backdrop of other people's tragedy. To be told your mind or your finances were suspect by the people you helped most was an intimacy turned violent. I thought of the ledger in the drawer and of Mr. Carlson's eyes when he processed the transfer cancellation. I thought of the down payment receipt, the phone call that had come in the small hours when the fridge broke and they had nothing, the nights I had sat awake worrying over how to keep the rent current because no one else seemed to feel the urgency. How very American to give your life to someone and have them call your ability into question the moment you stood up for yourself. I did not scream. I sat at my kitchen table and set the legal paper in front of me like a document to be read, cataloged, understood. Then I made my list. 1. Call Margaret Chen, the attorney who had once beaten a big bank in a real estate fight before Jonah was born. If anyone knew how to fight a conservatorship, it would be her. 2. Photocopy every check, every wire, every contract I had signed. Ledger by ledger, receipt by receipt. Facts are armor. 3. Change the locks. I would not be surprised if they tried to take my keys while the court moved like molasses. 4. Tell no one but Renee, the investor who had once said she trusted old-fashioned records more than charm. If anyone could vouch for the legitimacy of my accounts, it would be someone who read numbers for a living. I folded the notice and slid it into the back pocket of my apron. The machines in the laundromat down the street hummed like a heartbeat as I left the house to take a walk I hadn't planned to take. I wanted to move, to not let the walls of my own memories close in. On the corner, a woman I knew from church, the one who always said I gave too much, called my name. Her face was sympathetic, the way faces are before they choose allegiance. She asked quietly, Are you all right, Leela? I met her eyes and for the first time in months did not ask for forgiveness for my own choices. I'm fine, I said. I'm doing what I should have done years ago. I thought of the money, the $33,100, and the nights I had chosen to stay awake so their dream would not die. I thought of the little girl who used to help peel potatoes for a neighbor's rent. That girl had learned to give, this woman had learned to own what she gave. Back at home, Margaret's voicemail popped up on my phone like a lighthouse. Her voice came through, brisk, wry, Leela, Margaret from Chen and Park. I heard something through the grapevine. If you need me, come by, bring everything. Relief was a strange animal. It settled like warm bread in my chest. I called her back, left a short message. Margaret, it's Leela Morin. They're planning conservatorship. I need help. I hit send and felt the shape of the next day form itself like a map. I poured myself a glass of water and sat with the legal paper spread out under the kitchen lamp. Outside, a car engine idled and then drove off. Jonah's, Anya's. A small sound that was theirs and no longer mine. The fight had begun. I could feel it in my bones, the slow, steady way a woman learns to count receipts like weapons and testimony like shelter. I had been the one who held their life together. I would not let them call me incapable of doing the same for mine. When my phone lit up one more time that night, it was a number I did not recognize. The voice on the other end introduced himself professionally, cool, and entirely unpleasant. Mrs. Morin, this is Peter Hale. I'm counsel for Miss Reed. We suggest you not make any sudden financial changes. It would be a shame if a judge interpreted that as evidence of impaired judgment. He hung up before I could answer. The phrase evidence of impaired judgment echoed in my head like a warning bell. I set the phone down, closed the ledger drawer, and reached for the worn envelope in my apron. Tomorrow I would go to Margaret. I would bring the spiral, the canceled checks, copies of every wire transfer. I would teach the court what generosity looks like on paper. I would not beg, I would show. And in the quiet that followed, with the house finally still and the hum of the neighborhood slipping into sleep, I let myself feel the first ember of something that had been smoldering for years. Not vengeance, not cruelty, but a fierce reclaiming. If they wanted a drama, I would give them a record. If they wanted a narrative built of charm and exclusion, I would return theirs with indelible facts. I folded the conservatorship notice and slid it into a drawer. Outside the window, the moon hung like a witness. The next morning, my first call would be to Margaret Chen. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The house was too quiet, not peaceful quiet, but the kind that comes before a storm. On the table lay the envelope from last night, notice of intent to file for conservatorship. I read it again, word by word, until the paper felt heavier in my hand. They wanted to have me declared legally incompetent. My son, my daughter-in-law, the same people whose groceries I'd paid for, whose taxes I'd filed, whose lives I'd carried. I wasn't going to cry, I was going to act. By 7:15 a.m., I was sitting in the office of Margaret Chen, my lawyer. She was sharp, small, and moved like a woman who didn't waste verbs. She listened without interrupting as I told her everything: the dinner, the humiliation, the conservatorship notice, the years of quiet exploitation. When I finished, she folded her hands and said simply, "What your son and daughter-in-law are attempting is elder financial abuse and coercion. And it's illegal." "Illegal?" I repeated. The word didn't sound real yet. "Yes," she said, "we're going to file a preventive affidavit to block any conservatorship attempt. Then we'll document every dollar you ever gave them, gifts, loans, transfers, everything. Once we establish intent and pattern, it's not a family misunderstanding. It's exploitation." We spent nearly 3 hours building the paper trail. Margaret's assistant scanned receipts, transfer proofs, checks, everything from my ledger. She whistled softly as the total rose on her calculator. 33,100, she murmured. "Mrs. Morin, that's a modest fortune." Margaret nodded grimly. "Enough to build a case and enough to prove motive." I exhaled for the first time in hours. Margaret handed me a folder labeled Client Defense, L. Morin V's. Morin Enterprises, LLC. "From now on," she said, "don't speak to them directly. Forward all communication to me and get your locks changed. Today." Her confidence steadied me like a warm hand. For months, I'd been gaslit into believing I was weak, emotional, incapable. Now, in the light of paperwork and legal language, I saw what I really was: dangerous to their narrative. At the hardware store, the owner, an old friend named Cal Summers, looked up from the counter and smiled. "Well, Leela, what broke this time? Jonah's place again?" I smiled faintly. "No, Cal, this time it's my own house. I need new locks, the kind that can't be duplicated." His son Ethan, who handled installations, looked up from the aisles. "We've got smart locks now, code, camera, phone app. Want that?" "Yes," I said, "and a full camera system. Front and back." He blinked. "Expecting trouble?" I met his eyes evenly. "Let's call it peace of mind." While Ethan installed the system that afternoon, my phone buzzed with unknown numbers, half of them I was sure were Anya using burner phones. I ignored everyone, but by evening a voicemail arrived that made me stop in my tracks. "Leela, it's Anya. Please don't be angry, we need to talk. It's not about money, it's about family. Come to dinner tonight, just the three of us. I'll cook your favorite chicken marsala, let's start over." I laughed out loud. Chicken marsala, the dish she'd once said was too old-fashioned when I cooked it. The irony would have been delicious if it weren't poisoned. Margaret's voice echoed in my head, "Don't go anywhere uninvited. Don't give them opportunity." I texted back one line: "Anya, if you need money, call your lawyer. If you need conscience, call a priest." Then I turned my phone off and went to bed early, the kind of early that isn't rest but recovery. The next morning, I walked into Harbor Cafe for the first time in a year. I used to love that place, the smell of cinnamon rolls, the laughter of people not burdened by obligation. The waitress Marla recognized me instantly. Leela, haven't seen you in forever. The usual, actually, I said, smiling, make it a treat, add whipped cream. She laughed. Someone's celebrating. I thought for a moment. Freedom, I said simply. She nodded as if she understood. Maybe she did. While sipping my coffee, I saw an older woman at the next table glance up with a smile. Excuse me, she said, are you Mrs. Morin from Cedar Lane? Yes, I said cautiously. I'm Alina Brooks, your neighbor. I heard some shouting the other day. Are you all right? There it was again, genuine concern from a stranger, more compassion than I'd gotten from my own son in years. I smiled and invited her to join me. We talked. She listened. When I told her everything, she didn't gasp or pity me. She nodded, steady and knowing. I went through it too, she said quietly. My daughter tried the same thing 5 years ago. When I stopped giving, she said I was losing my mind. What happened? I asked. I stopped apologizing, she said. They got jobs, they learned. It took a year, but they came back different. You can't fix people with money, Mrs. Morin. You only teach them that love has an invoice. Her words sank in like warm medicine. When we left the cafe, she touched my arm. If you ever need company, come over. Real family doesn't always share your blood. That afternoon, Ethan finished installing the cameras. You can see every angle on your phone, he explained. And if anyone steps on your porch after midnight, it alerts the police. I smiled. Perfect. As soon as he left, my phone buzzed again, unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mrs. Morin, a calm voice asked. This is Melissa Hale from County Adult Services. We've received a report concerning your well-being and financial safety. I'm required to conduct a welfare check. My blood ran cold. Who reported me? I can't disclose that, ma'am. It's confidential. Of course it was. I didn't need disclosure. I could hear Anya's voice between the lines. Can I see your credentials? I asked when she arrived. She showed me an ID badge with the county seal. Everything looked official. She sat primly on my sofa, clipboard in hand. We've been told you recently made erratic financial changes, canceling payments, closing accounts, installing unnecessary surveillance, cutting off family contact. Sometimes these are signs of cognitive decline or manipulation. The professionalism in her tone was worse than accusation. It was the sound of bureaucracy deciding if you're sane. I smiled politely. Miss Hale, I assure you I'm fine. I have receipts for everything. She hesitated. May I ask who's assisting you with finances now? My attorney, I said. Would you like her number? That changed her tone. Oh, you're represented? Yes, I said, dialing Margaret's number. In fact, she advised me to record all visits for my safety. The color drained from the social worker's face. That won't be necessary. It already is, I interrupted. For transparency? When Margaret arrived 20 minutes later, she walked in like a storm in heels. Mrs. Hale, she said coolly, flashing her own ID, my client is of sound mind and fully protected under the Elder Rights Act. If you have any legitimate concerns, you can send them in writing to my office. The young woman stammered. We just needed to verify. Margaret handed her a folder. Here are 3 years of tax returns, medical clearances, and notarized bank statements. Now tell me, Mrs. Hale, who confidentially filed the complaint? I can't say. Then I'll assume defamation, Margaret said. Good day. When the door closed, I exhaled the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Margaret turned to me. They've escalated, Leela, which means they're desperate. Desperation makes mistakes. Let them. Her words were calm, but beneath them I felt the hum of something new, strategy. That night, as I logged into the new camera system on my phone, I saw headlights stop across the street. Jonah's truck. Anya beside him, gesturing wildly. They didn't come to the door, they just sat there, watching. I turned the phone toward the window and waved, smiling, the kind of smile that says, you can't touch me anymore. They drove off within seconds. For the first time in years, I went to bed not afraid of being alone, but proud of it. Tomorrow, Margaret and I would begin the paperwork to file an injunction and countersuit for elder coercion and defamation. If they wanted war, they were about to learn. You don't win against a woman who's already lost everything and survived. When Margaret arrived at my door that morning, she was already holding a thick folder. Her expression told me everything. They filed it, she said. Jonah and Anya have submitted a formal petition to the court. They want you declared mentally incompetent. The words hit me like a physical blow. You mean they actually went through with it? Yes. Margaret's tone was flat, professional, but I could see her anger simmering. They've attached witness statements, supposed medical documents, and a declaration from a psychiatrist they hired, a Dr. Callahan. He claims you refused an evaluation, which they're spinning as proof of mental decline. I laughed bitterly. So protecting myself makes me crazy now? According to them, yes, she said. We have 2 weeks before the first hearing. We'll need our own evaluation, affidavits from your doctor, your banker, and anyone who's seen you functioning clearly. And Leela, what? She held my gaze. They're trying to bankrupt you through court fees. Be ready. The next 2 weeks blurred into paperwork and appointments. Margaret arranged for an independent psychologist, Dr. Mason, to conduct a full cognitive and emotional assessment. He was in his 50s, gray at the temples, calm but piercing. Mrs. Morin, he said kindly, these cases are always emotional, but my job is simple: to establish the truth. We'll do some tests, talk about your finances, your memory, your reasoning, your relationships. No trick questions. For 2 hours, he asked everything from arithmetic to ethics. I balanced hypothetical budgets, identified shapes, recalled word lists, and explained the logic behind decisions I'd made, like installing cameras and canceling automatic transfers. When we finished, he smiled. Your mental clarity and reasoning are excellent. In fact, above average for your age. I'll send my report to the court and to Miss Chen directly. For the first time in weeks, I breathed normally. That night, Alina and a few of the women from her book club came over with soup and stories. Their laughter filled the room, and for a few hours, I forgot the heaviness of court filings and legal strategy. You're stronger than you think, Alina said as she refilled my tea. They don't realize who they're dealing with yet. I smiled faintly. They will. 3 weeks later, the hearing notice arrived. State of Massachusetts Family Court Case No. 23-475 billion in the matter of Morin. Leela versus Morin, Jonah and Morin. Anya petition for guardianship. I dressed carefully that morning, a charcoal suit, simple pearl earrings, the same silver watch my husband had given me on our 10th anniversary. I wasn't going to court as a victim. I was going as evidence that they were wrong. Margaret arrived promptly at 8, folder under her arm. Remember, she said, you don't owe them anger, just truth. At the courthouse, Jonah stood in the hallway, eyes fixed on the floor. Anya was beside him in a sleek black dress, the picture of self-control. When she saw me, her lips curved into a smile too calm to be kind. Good morning, Leela, she said. You look composed, that's good. Margaret stepped between us. Save it for testimony? Anya's lawyer, Mr. Reed, was an older man with a predatory politeness. He greeted Margaret with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Inside the courtroom, Judge Naomi Keller presided, a woman in her 60s, calm but alert. She read through the file briefly before glancing at us. Let's begin. Mr. Reed rose first, voice solemn. Your Honor, this case is about protection, not punishment. Mrs. Morin is 71, widowed, and recently exhibiting irrational behavior. Installing surveillance cameras, firing long-time financial contacts, isolating herself from family, and canceling automatic transfers that sustained her son's business. These are warning signs of cognitive decline. He paused dramatically. We are here to ensure her safety and preserve her estate before irreversible damage occurs. He made it sound so noble that for a moment I almost wanted to applaud the performance. Then Margaret stood. Your Honor, what my colleague calls decline, I call boundaries. Mrs. Morin is of sound mind, and what she canceled were not support payments, they were years of exploitation. She will prove that every decision she made was logical, necessary, and long overdue. Judge Keller nodded. Proceed. The first witness was Anya. She took the stand with practiced sorrow. Leela has always been like a mother to me, she began, voice trembling slightly. But lately she's been different, forgetful, suspicious. She accused us of stealing when all we did was worry. We love her, but she's pushing everyone away. Mr. Reed handed her a tissue like it was part of the act. Can you give an example of irrational behavior? She installed 10 cameras around her house, Anya said, dabbing fake tears. She says it's for safety, but she's never been in danger. She even locked us out and changed her phone number. We're scared for her." When Margaret cross-examined, her tone was ice. "Mrs. Morin," she said, "when was the last time you visited your mother-in-law without asking for money?" Anya froze. "We visit all the time." "Without asking for money." Silence. "I can't recall exact dates," she said finally. "Do you recall excluding her from your investor dinner?" "That was a misunderstanding." Margaret leaned closer. "And when you told her she didn't belong because she wasn't part of the brand, was that also a misunderstanding?" Anya's eyes flickered. "Those words were taken out of context." "What's the correct context?" Margaret asked. "For humiliating the woman who paid for your business?" The courtroom murmured. Judge Keller rapped her gavel. "Enough." "Next witness." Jonah took the stand next. His face was pale. "My mother has been acting paranoid," he said, voice shaking. "She stopped trusting anyone. I'm just trying to help her." Margaret stood. "Mr. Morin, how much money has your mother given you in the past 3 years?" "I don't know the exact amount." "Would $33,100 sound correct?" "Maybe." "And how many months of your mortgage did she pay?" 6. "Did she also buy your catering equipment?" "Yes." Margaret paced slowly. "So when she decided to stop funding you, you filed to have her declared incompetent." "That's correct." He shifted in his chair. "That's not fair." "Fair," Margaret cut him off. "Mr. Morin, is it fair to ask a 71-year-old widow to finance your adult life while you call her unstable for saying no?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Judge Keller adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Morin, answer the question." Jonah lowered his gaze. "No, ma'am." The third witness was a neighbor, Mr. Harding, who claimed I had been acting erratically. "She talks to herself outside, installed cameras everywhere, and yells at visitors," he said smugly. Margaret asked, "Do you know who those visitors were?" "I don't. Strangers." "Would it surprise you to learn they were her attorney, a licensed contractor, and members of her local garden club?" He blinked. "Oh. I didn't know that." No further questions. Then Margaret called our witnesses. Dr. Mason testified about my cognitive results. Mrs. Morin's mental acuity and decision-making ability are fully intact. There is no sign of dementia, cognitive decline, or paranoia. Her actions indicate rational protective behavior, not instability. Alina spoke next, radiant and fierce. "I've known Leela for years. She's more clear-headed now than I've ever seen her. The only thing she's losing is patience for people who take advantage of her." The courtroom chuckled softly. Even Judge Keller smiled. Finally, it was my turn. I took the oath, my hands steady. "Mrs. Morin," Mr. Reed began, "why did you abruptly stop supporting your son's business?" "Because I realized I wasn't supporting a business," I said calmly. "I was supporting dependency. And dependency destroys love. Don't you feel it's your responsibility as a mother?" "My responsibility," I said, "was to raise my son to be independent, not to pay his bills forever. He's 35, married, and capable. I gave him opportunity, he mistook it for obligation." Mr. Reed frowned. "You installed security cameras, changed locks, and cut off communication. Isn't that excessive?" "When the people you love break into your home to take your papers," I said, "security is sanity." Margaret nodded, her eyes proud. "No further questions?" By the time both sides rested, the courtroom air felt charged. Judge Keller sat back, hands folded. "I will review all evidence and testimony," she said. "My decision will be issued within 10 days. 10 days? That's how long I had to live in limbo between freedom and the possibility of being legally erased." Outside the courthouse, Anya brushed past me, her perfume sharp as acid. "Enjoy your little performance," she whispered. "It won't last." I met her gaze. "Neither will your lies." Jonah followed, eyes downcast, guilt written in the slump of his shoulders. For the first time, he didn't look like my son. He looked like a man who'd made a deal with the devil and realized the devil wanted more than he could pay. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did perfectly," she said. "Whatever happens, you showed them who you are." I nodded, but inside, my mind was a whirl of exhaustion and disbelief. How had love turned into litigation? That night, I sat by the window, watching headlights trace across my driveway, the same driveway Jonah had helped me pave years ago. The irony twisted in my chest. On the table lay a single folded note Alina had left before court. "You can't lose what was never love. You can only set it down." I held that note until the sun came up. 10 days. 10 days until a judge decided whether I was a mother with rights or a bank account with no mind. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. 10 days of waiting, 10 nights of doubt, all for this moment. Jonah sat on the left, hands clasped. Anya looked polished, almost glowing, the kind of glow that comes from thinking you've already won. Judge Keller adjusted her glasses. This court will now announce its decision in Morin versus. Morin, I could hear my heartbeat. Mr. Reed spoke first, oily as ever. Your Honor, this is about love, not money. My clients only seek to protect Mrs. Morin from her own confusion. Margaret rose next, calm and razor-sharp. Confusion, Your Honor, doesn't pay $33,100 in bills over 3 years. What my client suffers from isn't confusion, it's exploitation disguised as family. The judge nodded. Proceed. I took the stand. My voice didn't shake this time. I stopped helping them because I realized my love had turned into their entitlement. I was funding their lives while being erased from it. Mr. Reed smirked. Mrs. Morin, are you saying your family's concern is a crime? No, I said. I'm saying their concern only started when the money stopped. The courtroom went still. Margaret smiled. No further questions? 2 hours later, we were called back. Judge Keller's tone was steady. This court finds Mrs. Morin fully competent. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Anya's face froze. Jonah's lips parted, but no sound came. The judge wasn't done. Furthermore, the plaintiffs will reimburse Mrs. Morin's legal fees. The matter is referred for investigation into financial coercion. Gavel, done, Margaret grinned. You're free, Leela, I whispered back. No, I'm finally respected. That evening, Alina lit candles in her backyard. To freedom, she said, raising her glass. To saying no, I added. We laughed until the sky turned soft and gold. Months later, I sold the old house, too heavy with ghosts. I moved near the ocean. Bright mornings, quiet evenings, no guilt in the walls. I heard Jonah and Anya's business collapsed. Maybe karma keeps better books than I ever did. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone new. Someone who learned that generosity without respect is just another form of debt. My name is Leela Morin. I'm 71. And the only thing I'll ever let anyone own again is my smile.